Pop, what's going on, man?
Good. Doing good, son. Can't
What's going
wait.
on?
We need
Going on good. There we go. Off to a strong start here.
the most the most entertaining part of the show sometimes is the pre-production meeting.
Yeah, I wish you guys could see it, man. Wish you guys could see it. I have to save it for Patreon. Get us, that reminds me, guys, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this for the first time. If you've been watching us and you're not subscribed, don't forget to click on. It's a lot of fun stuff coming to you every week live. This one, a little bit of evergreen podcast, a little pre-recorded to accommodate for some travel, some scheduling stuff. But we are going to be talking 5 bold predictions for the Commanders in 2025. So obviously, if there's been some kind of emergency that is more important than this or, you know, supplants this information, then great, you'll hear from us. But if you're hearing this podcast, it means this is still up to date. So these are our 5 bold predictions for the Commanders 2025 season with a twist. Number 5 is a wild card. I left number 5 to Pop to figure out. So
I'm
we'll
still
see.
in the
But
lab researching that one.
yeah, Pop is still figuring that one out. So I might be doing a solo pod for the next 18 minutes. Hopefully, we get a contribution from the East Coast branch.
I'll be here. I'll be
There
here.
we
I'm
go.
always here. I always show up.
Along the way. Good. So, shall we get started on our bold predictions, Pop?
You didn't set up the rest of the podcast.
Oh, that's very important. Well,
Very important for them to stick around.
which is very important, is stick around. We are getting to part 2 of our NFL playoff way too early predictions. So today we're going to predict the NFC standings. We're going to seed it. We're going to predict what teams make the playoffs, so on and so forth. So for part number 1, let's get into it. Bold predictions, top 5 bold predictions for the Commanders in 2025. Let's kick it off. Ready?
Let's
Are you
do
ready
it.
to kick it off now, Pop? Okay, good. Let's
I'm
do it.
totally ready. Was
Yeah,
born ready.
you look 1,000,000% ready. I've never seen a man that looks more ready than Pop
I'm,
in this moment
I'm,
right now.
I'm totally juiced up.
Good. So, number 1 is Jaden Daniels is going to crack 30 passing touchdowns. This is probably, in my opinion, the most conservative of these bold predictions, but it is a bold prediction. And why is that number 30 significant, Pop?
Because it would break Sonny Jurgensen's record, right?
Well, it will break the streak since Sonny Jurgensen. Nobody's had
Nobody's done it since
30.
Sonny Jurgensen. Yeah.
Exactly. Nobody's had 30 passing touchdowns since Sonny Jurgensen. I think it's about that
I
time.
should know that. He's
You were
before my
there.
time. He's before my time, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought he was surely
I was
your
in
time.
diapers. I was in diapers. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not even twinkle in Pop's eye. Pop was barely a twinkle in Pop's eye at that point.
Exactly.
But yeah, so we're predicting Jaden Daniels is going to crack 30 passing touchdowns, breaking that record. I think it's not a matter of if he does it at some point in his career, it's just a matter of when. And I think when better than next year, right, Pop?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, how many did he have last year?
I don't know off the top of my head, but a significant amount. I think 20 and change.
It seems like a lot to me. I don't know. It seems like a lot. But because I just feel like there's so many different ways that this offense is going to succeed. But I think one case to be made for it is you do have some better yak guys and Samuel
Yeah.
and the rookie speedster, Jalen
Lane.
Yeah, so you might pick up a couple of extra touchdown passes where it's really the receiver that does a lot of the work, but he can do so much with his legs and other aspects of the game. But I like it. I like that ball prediction.
He had 25 last year. So if you think about the amount of times he got tackled at guys got tackled at the 1 yard line, a lot of the deep balls that weren't finished early on in the year, some of the passes that were dropped in the end zone, like there was one play where I can think of off the top of my head where De'Ami Brown literally got hit in the hands and then dropped the pass.
That's
And then
fair.
the next play, we scored a touchdown with Brian Robinson Jr. by the goal line. But if you think about that, I think he could easily get to 30, and then you're not even factoring in like he didn't play the entire game against Carolina because of the rib injury. I think if he's healthy, plays all 17 games at full strength or as close to full strength as you'll be over the course of the NFL season, I think this one's a shoe-in personally. It doesn't even feel like a bold prediction, but we'll call it that. But I think you're right, Pop. The offense does get it done in a lot of different ways. Now, these next two are leaning defensively. We're going this one. Maybe I'm a little biased. Maybe I'm a little fired up off Joe Wood Jr.'s presser today. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think Quan Martin is going to take the next step and be a Pro Bowler next year.
Yeah, there's been some really great buzz coming out of camp with Quan. Apparently played pretty hurt last year. It seems like the coaches are super impressed with what he can bring to the table. I love it. If it happens, that's huge.
Yeah,
That's
I
huge. And a
think.
lot of times, we're not as, the example I can give is when Jay Gruden, was hyping up Terry McLaurin. And he just sort of like from the beginning of camp, he knew this guy's special. In fact, they didn't even play him in preseason, if you remember. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, I know Quan isn't a rookie, but maybe the coaching staff has seen enough of him and know enough of him that that they feel like he can be special. And I think that's the safeties are kind of a bit of a question mark this year. So if he could step up and be that kind of Pro Bowl player, that would be great for that defense.
yeah. I think it's insane when you think about like a year from now. I was hanging out with my buddy this morning. He's a Commanders fan as well from the DMV, and we were talking about it like a year ago. The hype was starting to build for Jane Daniels, and you could kind of hear the tone of voice in the announcers in the local media personality, kind of saying like, "Look, man, I know it's just OTAs, but he's really accurate. He's really poised. Not a lot of footballs hitting the ground. Like he looks like the real deal." And then training camp came along, and it was, I know it's just training camp, but the kid looks sensational. And then what happened over the year happened. A year ago with Quan Martin, Joe Wood Jr. actually sent him down to go play with the twos. He was demoted this time last year, and uh, Joe Jr. spoke about it. He said he was making mistakes that, quote, we can't afford to make. So they sent him down to the twos, let him get some work in the twos. And he said from that moment, something flipped in Quan's head and he changed. And now, to a year later, he was quoted today. He said, this kid has the potential to be one of the better safeties in the league. Joe Jr., that's the first time I've heard him talk that way about somebody that's not already an established force. This is not a guy that goes out to the media and hypes up his guys. He's more likely to tell you so and so sucked today than he is to say he's going to be a star. So for him to say that of Quan, and then he basically said he's turned into one of the three primary leaders on the defense behind Bobby Wagner and another guy that we're about to mention here for the next point. But I think I've always been very high on Quan and his abilities. I think he's a great player. I think him and Sam Cosmi were the two blind squirrel finds a nut situation for Ron Rivera and his draft process. And
Gonna say,
ironically enough, both second round guys. So for all the consternation about we never get a good second round pick, the worst drafter in maybe Commanders history, Redskins history, Washington football team history. I guess he did all three. Found two gems in the second round. But yeah, I think it's about time for a Quan Martin breakout personally. Um, I think he's a guy to look to that's only going to get better. Um, Speaking of guys that
yeah,
have
I
kind of
mean,
had, go
pretty
ahead.
strong words, right? Where Joe Wood's saying he thinks he can be one of the best in the NFL, which
Yeah,
it's pretty strong. That would equate to a Pro Bowler if he's right.
yeah, I agree, and
Yeah,
that's why I have him there. I think All Pro is a little strong, maybe in a couple years, but I doubt it. All Pro is like right there, but I think Pro Bowler nowadays is that next tier of like, hey, you deserve a nod, and maybe he's a second team Pro Bowler or something like that. But I think he can at least get into that conversation or Pro Bowl caliber. For our third one, here's a guy that I believe has been a Pro Bowler, maybe not, but he has achieved this feat before. Is Deron Payne at number three here? We're going to say Deron Payne is going to have more than 10 sacks this year. And so we're looking for that production from Fowler to come from somewhere, right? And maybe it's Kinlaw, maybe it's Johnny Newton takes a step up. But my prediction is Deron Payne because, again, uh, Joe Witt Jr. was quoted in saying that he's become the third leader of this defense. He's today's presser with Joe Witt Jr. was like the Deron Payne fan club meeting. He had nothing but amazing things to say about how Deron's been working, how Deron's been playing, and you know, he'd be a bit incentivized to do so this year, wouldn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so for sure. It was a contract year, and when you originally wrote this up, yeah, Dominic did the outline this week. People, it's a
He
special
did.
week.
He
Um,
did.
you looked at it and said he's had 10 sacks before. And the last time, I guess, was his previous contract year. It seems like a lot for him and a tackle, and knowing that there's probably going to be a bit of a rotation going on. I probably would have said, the Dorrance Armstrong or a Frankie Louva, because Armstrong came on strong at the end of last year. He was originally supposed to be our lead dog at defensive end, and
Yeah.
it didn't quite work out that way, but he did come on really strong at the end. Or Frankie Louvu, would be two other guys. I think that if we were going to say who do I think is the player that gets over 10 sacks, I'd probably pick one of those guys first. But I like it. I mean, I thought as we were talking bold predictions, I thought Duran having a breakout season, whether it's a 10 sack season or year two in the defense, I could see him having a great year, like a Pro Bowl
Yeah.
caliber year. I hope so.
In order to make it bold predictions, I threw that 10 plus in there because I think
Yeah,
saying that Rod Payne has a good year this year in a contract year, a guy that should be in about the peak of his career, is proven to perform in contract years. Last time, like Pop said, in 2021 or 2022, last time he was up for a deal, I guess 2022 now because time moves in light speed. He had 11 and a half sacks that year. And if you remember that defense, he was the star on that defense. And that defense was
yeah.
loaded. That was like the number 3 defense in the NFL that year. You had Chase Young, Montez Sweat, John Allen, and Deron Payne all on that defensive line. You had Pop at linebacker, but you did have that great
I've
defensive
been
line.
beefing up lately. I'm getting
Yeah.
ready.
Well, Pop's slimming down now that he doesn't have to play linebacker anymore. But and yeah, he produced. He was the star of that defense and won us a few games with some deflected passes, stuff like that. You can go back and watch the podcast that we did when he re-signed and compare that to how we talked about him since. But I think it's time he gets it back this year, and I think things are kind of turning around in terms of the culture here. And I think the bottom line is like you saw what happened to John Allen, right? So if you don't get it together, he's going to be out next year, and if he doesn't produce this year and is out next year, he's going to be in for a big pay cut the year after that. So I think he'll certainly be incentivized to keep that moving. Speaking of guys on 1-year deals, short contracts, guys that are incentivized. Number 4, we're going back to the offense here. Deebo Samuel is going to lead the team in non-quarterback all-purpose yards. That's my bold prediction for this year. I think the way they'll use him as a receiver and as a running back, I think he's going to get both used. I'm not going to go crazy and say he's going to have 2,000 yards, but I think he might be in the like 1,300 to 1,400 yard range between the two. And I think that will be more than you'll see. I think Terry, you can always put down for 1,000 yards. Maybe he ends closer to 1,200 if he has a good year. And I don't think we have a 1,000-yard running back on the roster right now, unless Bill Merritt goes absolutely wild. But I don't see that happening. Or Nick Chubb,
No,
maybe a little Nick Chubb news coming down the pike for later. But
I
I
don't think
think
so either.
I hope not. But I do think Debo will lead the team. If as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to lead the team in non-quarterback all-purpose yards.
This would be where I'd probably circle this one to be the most conservative one, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a really high chance, high probability that this happens. I think it's bold because Debo does have a big question mark still. There's a lot of people not sure. I guess a bit of a down year last year, although that entire team had a bit of a down year. So stay tuned to whether or not we think San Francisco will bounce back next season. But no, I like this one a lot. I think listen to previous pods. We're very high on Mr. Debo Samuel, and we think that Cliff Kingsbury is licking his chops in terms of ways of utilizing them. So yeah, I think that's a great pick.
And then now, speaking of great
The
picks,
mystery pick.
your time to shine, Pop.
The mystery pick.
The mystery pick at number 5.
So I was thinking through this and I was wanting to kind of say, I figured let's go with a rookie. Like we haven't really talked about a rookie in this group yet. And I was kind of going down the list and trying to figure out what made the most sense. But I think my bold prediction is going to be Jalen Lane will be the third leading receiver on this team.
I like it.
He's
I
going to
like it.
make an impact this year. I've got a vibe on Jalen. You talked about, I'm going to butcher his name, but the running back, the seventh round running back to
Krosky Merritt.
Krosky Merritt. I think that he's a guy that I think will make the team, will flash at times. Who might be this year's Rodriguez, right? In the sense that I think he'll show. There'll be times where when he gets the carries, we'll go, why doesn't he get more? But I don't know that he's going to be a steady attack guy. I think they're going to run it back with B. Rob and Eckler unless there's injuries involved. But I think Jalen Lane's going to make an impact, and I'm going to predict he's going to be third leading receiver on this team.
I hope so, man. I hope so. I think that would be a very positive thing if he's the third leading receiver on this team, because I think you should shoe in McLaurin and Samuel for 1 and 2, hopefully.
Again, receiver. So I'm not counting the tight ends. I'm not counting the running backs. I'm saying of the true wide receiver core, he'll be the third. He'll produce the third most of that group.
That'd be great. You might be talking
about. If you think about him filling in for like an OZ, he was right around there last year, right? So it's not out of the realm of the possibility. He's got the skill set to make that happen.
Goodness, if you're putting Debo down for 1,400, Terry down for 1,200, you're putting Jalen Lane down for maybe 700-800. Is Jaden Daniels 4,000-yard passing year? Is that our number 6 prediction? I don't think so. I don't think with this game. I think he's capable of it, but I think the legs will be too much of a factor in too many situations for him to get there. I just don't think he's going to throw for that many attempts. If we went full Cincinnati Bengals offense and just threw the ball 40 times, I think he'd easily get there. But I don't think that'll happen. But I love that pick, Pop. I think you're going
to get meaningful contributions from those top 3 picks. I really do. I think Josh Connerly is going to establish himself as a starter. I think Trey Amos is going to establish himself as a starter and get lots of opportunities. And Jalen Lane won't be, maybe not so much a starter, but may work his way into that mode. Because he's a burner too, people kind of like, I don't know that he's exclusively needs to be a slot guy or that he conflicts necessarily with what Debo's bringing to us, because he can burn. He can get down the field. He can give you, that deep ball, right? You can set him up wide and just let him go. And so I think that's where, he's got multiple ways that he can help us. So we'll see. He is a rookie, but best I could come up with on short notice,
Done pretty well, Pop.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on. Let's get into part 2, which is going to be our NFL picks. We're going to be talking NFC division winners and wild card teams.
Woo!
Last week we did AFC, had a couple bold predictions in there, had some fun. And so this week we're going to probably do the same thing here. Now, I've got us starting with the NFC East. And I think any Commanders fans that have been with us this long, you stayed the whole 20 minutes into the pod at this point, I think you deserve to be rewarded and talked about first. What do you think, Pop? You good to start with the NFC East?
I'm good. I'm good with it. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do.
Last year, Philly won the NFC East at 14-3. We were right behind them at 12-5. Could have been pretty darn interesting if we don't miss that extra point and if Johnny Newton stays on sides. But I digress. We were 12-5. Dallas ends up 7-10, and the Giants 3-14 last year. Now, I think these two teams still make the playoffs personally, but what order? Who wins the East?
Yeah, I this is a tough one, right? I would love to be bold and say the Commanders are going to win the division, but it's tough I think if they were in any of the other divisions, I would probably be bold enough to say that. But I just think I've got to defer to Philly at this time. I still think they're the best roster in football. Anything can happen in any given year. You never know. I do think we're closing the gap on them. I'm just not ready to say we've completely closed the gap on them. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a tougher battle. I think they're going to split their games in the regular season. And I think if we do meet again in the playoffs, which I have to stay tuned, because we're not only going to do playoff teams, we're going to do and seed them. We're going to do every playoff round as part of this whole series that we're doing over the next few weeks. But I'll give Philly the division title and Washington a very close second place.
I'm going the other way.
I knew you
I
were.
will say Washington's going to win the division title. Pop always likes to give everybody else the respect. It's just kind of part of Pop's juju. Likes to give everybody else the
It's some of
respect
that.
and the flowers, and he doesn't
It's
like to
some of
say it.
that.
I'll go ahead and say it, man. You don't put
A
any
little bit of
stock
Joe
into.
Gibbs in
Yeah,
me.
quite a bit of Joe Gibbs. You don't put any stock into the Saquon on the Madden cover, and
If
you
we
might be
won,
a
I'll
little.
say this: if we won the division, I would not be shocked. I mean, I'd be extremely happy. But I think that I think that's a close race, a lot closer race than some. Some obviously a lot of Philly fans would like to admit. But even if I'm trying to be objective here, until proven otherwise, I think they've got a better roster than we do right still.
Yeah. Well, Philly
And
fans admit it every day with their obsession with tweeting at Commanders fans all day on Twitter. Not anybody in particular, the fan base in general. The fact that you can't go on any Commanders post without seeing 55-23 in the comments, y'all are telling on yourselves. We know how that game ended. You're telling on yourselves. You're afraid because you don't go post that you blew out Dallas, 42-12 or something like that. You don't go post that. You only post a 55-23 because you know we're coming for you. You know we're coming for you, and you're afraid. Anyways,
I
we
knew
don't
you were
think
gonna. I knew you were
Dallas.
gonna go to Commanders. So part of me was hedging a little bit on that. And yeah,
Enjoy.
there's definitely me not wanting to put the Malakya on our boys and jinx them or anything. But I'll still give Philly the respect.
I'm enjoying it. I made the
I
anti
love it.
jinx. I made the anti jinx sentiment last year. I said, you know what? We don't get these types of seasons often. I'm gonna ride for the boys. I'm gonna say we are what we are. I said we were in NFC Championship contention early on in the season. Check the tape. Pop didn't like that take at all. Look at where we ended up. I said we were better than certain teams that were being ranked ahead of us. We made it further than them in the playoffs. I said Jane Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFL, and he damn near shows it every week. I got nothing left. And it's getting all proven right for me, so I'm going to keep riding for my boys. NFC North,
So I guess no other
last year,
playoff teams. It's safe to say no other playoff teams coming out of this division.
hell no.
Yeah. So
No.
I tend to agree. I I don't think Dallas or it's going to be a great season for either Dallas or New York.
I just got no. Dallas has a decent roster. I just got no faith in Schottenheimer as a coach,
I
and
could see.
especially
Yeah,
to
I agree
hold
with you
together
there.
those personalities. You're talking Dak coming back off an injury. Dak to me, I'm looking at Kirk Cousins post Achilles. That's how I see Dak this year. I think it's going to just be a guy that just can't get it back. Personally,
But is Dallas's roster really all that good? I mean, I
I
know they've
also
got
don't think so.
superstars, and CD Lamb and the edge guy. Sorry, Pop's brain is fried after a long day of work in Dallas.
Yeah,
Um, but
Parsons,
yeah, Micah Parsons. Thanks. Um,
who had a
but
down year last year, by the way.
Right. But I mean, those two guys you could argue are superstars, and sometimes I feel like they elevate what people's opinions are of the roster. And Dak's a solid quarterback, but he's not more than that.
Yeah,
He's proven that, so he can execute an offense. He can be effective when they're clicking. But is he going to put the team on his back and win games, or will I'd even put a Jalen Hurts in that situation where he can will them, or Jalen tends to have his best performances in the biggest moments, like the
Yeah,
championship game, right? So yeah, I anyway, enough said on that. But I'm aligned with you, and I think the Giants could have a better season and only get 6 wins, right? That would
yeah.
double their win total from last year.
Exactly. I mean,
So yeah,
barring, Jackson Dart, who is not the plan to start there, by the way, by any stretch of the imagination. Jackson Dart's probably not going to start the season. He might not even play this season. So, barring Jackson Dart just becoming the second coming of Jaden Daniels, which don't hold your breath, I don't see how this team, the Giants team, is just in such disarray. You want to talk about a bad roster. Um, yeah, I don't see it with either team. And don't look now. Dak Prescott's 31 years old. Dak Prescott's 31 years old. He's consistently underperformed his contract and
it's a
his
great
value.
point.
He's coming off an injury. This is not. I don't want to bet on quarterbacks over 30 coming back from serious injuries. I don't, personally. You watch guys that are 24 come back from injuries like that and struggle for a year. Maybe the year after this year, Dak will be good, but I don't bet on it personally. And that's even betting that he can stay on the field for 17 games. I'm out on Dallas. NFC North. Now, talk about a few teams you're going to be in on. Last year, how's this? I mean, this is just the best division in football by a mile. You got Detroit at 15-2, Minnesota 14-3, Green Bay 11-6, and Chicago 5-12. Chicago started off the season 4-2 last year.
They'll be
Came
better this
apart at the
year, I
seams
think.
after Eberflus got fired. Well, you got Ben Johnson, first year head coach. That should be
I know
interesting.
you're a big fan.
I don't believe in him one bit. I also don't believe in their quarterback one bit as much as I want to.
Johnson.
So what do we see here, Pop? Does Caleb Williams take that year two jump, prove to you that that wasn't the biggest mistake in NFL draft history? Does Jordan Love enter the MVP conversation, or are you looking at pretty slow? How does Detroit look after losing two coordinators?
I do think Detroit slides back a little bit this
Yeah,
year. I
agree.
think the question is, you got 3 playoff teams coming out of this group from last year. Are we saying that's going to be the case again this year? Now, some of that's looking at the other divisions and say, well, where's that other playoff team going to come from, right? But I definitely will stick with Detroit winning the division. I think that's I'll stick with them.
Yeah.
But the question is it Minnesota or is it Green Bay who slides back? What do you think?
Porque no los dos.
What?
Why not both?
Why not on both? Do you think they're both going to miss the playoffs?
Miss the playoffs? No, because I think the NFC is very top heavy, and I think once you get into that, who's going to make the playoffs, bottom end, it starts to get pretty weak. But I could see a situation where Detroit wins the division at like 12-5, and you've got Minnesota and Green Bay both hanging around 10 wins, and Tampa and Atlanta are both hanging around there as well. I could see that scenario, man.
So who do you pick to go out of Minnesota or Green Bay?
I'm going to say Minnesota.
Of course you are.
Because no. I'm going to say Green Bay is going to make the playoffs. Minnesota is going to be the team that misses.
Okay.
I think when you look at why Minnesota was so good last year, it was mostly that defense. Defense is very hard to sustain year in and year out in the NFL. It's very up and down.
It's a question of how much do you believe in JJ?
And
I know
that's the
you
other
believe in
thing you're adding.
KOC.
I do believe in KOC, but there's a lot of volatility with a new quarterback situation there. I think it's just safer to bet on Green Bay with the upgrades they've made, having a higher floor. I think Green Bay has a much higher floor. So at this point in the year, I'm going to bet Detroit, Green Bay. Jordan Love was playing hurt most of last year, gets the chance to come back, be 100% this year. If he can stay healthy, I like their odds at winning maybe 11 games again, and I think Minnesota ends closer to like 9 games.
Yep. Yep.
What do you think,
Okay.
Pop?
I'm with you. I'm going to pick Green Bay being the playoff team, the wild card
Yeah,
team that comes out of this division.
same. So
Yeah.
far we're in lockstep. We got Philly and Washington out of the East. Out of the North, we've got Detroit and Green Bay. Now out of the South, this is where I'm going to get spicy. Personally.
Ooh,
And I just got done talking about volatility and floors and this, that, and the other. I'm betting on the Atlanta Falcons to be the team that makes it out of the NFC South this year. I think the Tampa Bay Bucks missed the playoffs, and I think the Atlanta Falcons become the team to go forward because I think Michael Penix takes the next step, and I think Baker Mayfield lost Liam Cohen, who was the guy that kind of revived his career in LA, followed him to Tampa, revived his career there, and uh, I think Baker has been so consistently up and down his whole career. I think he had an up year last year. I think he's not going to be bad, but I think he comes back down to earth a little bit. And I think the rest of that Tampa team is pretty weak, especially with Godwin hurt, another year on Mike Evans. Those tires certainly have a bit of tread on them. So I personally take Atlanta here.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready to go there yet. I was impressed with Tampa throughout last season. I mean, they took it to us in week 1. They took us to overtime in the playoffs. I know that, different season, different roster. Hopefully the Commanders have gotten significantly better since last year, which I think is certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
But I think that Tampa team is well coached, plays good defense. I think Baker just battles, and they've still got enough talent there I agree. I like the Atlanta pick. I don't hate that. I think that's a super talented roster as well. You can see that maybe as things get settled in, but I'm not sure I'm totally bought into their situation at quarterback.
Okay.
I'm just not sure there.
You were high on Michael Penix going into the draft last year. You're not.
Michael Penix, you're right. But what I saw with him playing was pretty erratic. Like and I know, again, he battled. He led him on a game-tying drive against us, brought him into overtime, did some good things, but it was really inconsistent. The accuracy wasn't what I expected it to be. And now that he's the top guy going into it from day one, I'm just not as sold yet on Michael Penix. So in that respect, I'll give it to Tampa Bay, but I like, Atlanta's rising. And as far as the rest of the division, currently in New Orleans, I'm not holding out a lot of faith that those are going to make the jump to be playoff teams this time around. So that means we got to get 2 teams out of the NFC West at this point, unless we're going to cycle back.
Mm-hmm. That's why I've set it up this way. So how I view the Atlanta thing, last elevator pitch, both teams were 8-7 with 2 games left to go last year. Atlanta lost out because you're throwing a rookie quarterback into the fire because Kirk was so incompetent at that point in the year, and Tampa won out. So I think if you look at Penix, I think Penix's wins above replacement versus Kirk Cousins is probably higher. I think Atlanta may have already clinched that playoff spot if Penix had been playing the whole year, personally. But let's see where it goes next year. NFC West, you've got the Rams, won last year at 10-7. You've got the Seahawks, were also 10-7 quietly last year. And then you had the Cardinals were 8-9, and the 49ers were 6-11. Do the Cardinals, this is a fun division. Does San Fran bounce back? Do the Cardinals take the next step? What is up with Seattle? They just added Sam Darnold. They made a pretty big move to upgrade a quarterback there. They must feel like they're close. What is up with the Rams? Can they sustain? I think the Rams are the favorite, right? Do we pencil the Rams in for sure as long as Stafford's healthy?
So here's where I think things get interesting. I think Seattle takes a slide back. I know it'll come down with Sam Darnold, but I think KOC really coached him up, and we saw how he finished the year, which wasn't very good. Right. I think San Francisco bounces back. Yeah, I do. I think that's always been a strong team. I'm a big believer in Kyle Shanahan as a coach. I think they're going to come back very determined. And those are, Kyle's probably coaching for his job. quite honestly, right? At this
Might
point.
be,
I
crazily
mean, it's,
enough.
that fan base has very high expectations. They've won a bunch of championships back in the day, and we played golf. Remember that guy? They went and they lost in the Super Bowl, and he said he wanted to quit being a fan of San Francisco because he was tired of them losing. I was like,
Kick
you made it to the
ass.
Super Bowl. Are you kidding me?
Mind
And
you,
that
at
was
that point, we were
2 years
4 and
ago.
13 coming off of Sam Howell, and we started. That was just a social awareness issue. We started the conversation telling them we're Commanders fans, and this guy had the cojones to say, I'm about to quit football because my team made it to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl 2 years in a row. Man, kick ass.
But I think they have a
Anyways,
bounce back here. So I think it's the Rams and San Francisco coming out of this division. I think the Rams are an ascending team as well. I would expect
yeah.
that, they were 10-7. I expect them to be probably a game or two better than that this year. I'll go Rams winning it. Frisco with the wild card berth.
Yeah, I have the Rams winning it as well. I think there could be Rams 1 seed conversations.
Woo!
I think that's a good football team, man.
Wasn't ready to go there yet.
I think that's a really good football team. I mean, if you get Stafford for 17 games with that team, with that defense, and that defense is young. They are young. Nobody expected them to be as good as they were last year. They're young. They're trending. McVay, I think, is as good of a coach as there is in football. I think as soon as Andy Reid retires, McVay becomes the best coach in the NFL. I love everything about uh, the Los Angeles Rams for next year. So I'm definitely taking them. And when we get into seeding, I haven't pre-seeded my picks, so that'll
Who's your
get
playoff
interesting.
team coming out here? You haven't really said that yet.
I don't know. I'm like caught in between two thoughts on Seattle and San Francisco. I believe in what Mike McDonald's been building in Seattle. I do think San Francisco could bounce back, but I think San Fran's. You got to pay all that money to Brock Purdy. You pay all that money to George Kittle. Debo's not in the building anymore. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, it's a question mark.
I don't know, man. I think San Francisco wins like 9 games and Kyle gets fired. I'm going to go ahead and take Seattle.
Okay. I like it. We
So
got
this is a
some.
bold choice here, but I think San Fran's schedule is very easy, but I think
You never
Seattle
know.
turns
You
into
never
a
know with
decent team.
schedules, right? That's
Yeah,
always the most. I think that's the most overrated
agree.
conversation in a preseason is schedule. So you got to seed these guys.
Yeah,
What's
let's
your
do it.
seeding here?
So
Pencil you in
I
for the Commanders number one.
if we're staying consistent, and see, here's my issue with you, Pop. You say you think Philly drops off a little bit, but you picked the Commanders to win 13 games a couple
Philly
podcasts
could
ago.
win
So if Philly
14.
drops off a little bit, well, if they drop off a little bit, they're not winning 14.
All right, they
Just
win
mathematically
13 and get the
speaking,
tiebreak.
semantics. Uh,
Did I say Philly was dropping off? When did I say that? I said we
you said
closed
the
the
gap's
gap.
closing. Okay,
That's
maybe
us catching
they stay.
them, not them
Okay,
dropping
hey,
off.
you know
Just
what?
to
Go
be
ahead,
clear.
put a little Scott on another
And
2,000 yard
if they
season
were
for
14 and
Saquon. Let me know
3,
how that
and we
goes.
go 13 and 4, the gap has been closed.
All I know is Philly's got about 8 to 1,200 yards from scrimmage to make up for that are not going to happen again this
All
season.
right, seed this
Figure
thing,
out.
son.
I got. That's it. I'm going Rams 1. I'm in wild.
We got to run this back at the end of the season.
I'm getting wild. I got Rams as the 1 seed, Washington at 2. Give me Detroit at 3, Atlanta 4. And then I picked Green Bay. No, we'll go Philly 5. And Philly's going to be like a 12 and 5 seed. It's going to be like how we were last year. Philly 5, Green Bay 6, Seattle 7.
Okay. I'll give Philly the 1 seed.
Of course. Pop's got his Eagles jersey on under
Okay.
that shirt.
Since you're so high on the Rams, I'll give them 2. I think I think Detroit slides back a little bit. They're 3, Tampa Bay 4, our boys 5. San Francisco 6 and Green Bay 7. Book it.
Booked. Booked. There it is. Yeah, Rams 1 is a little bold, but I honestly think it's us. But
Very bold.
I'm
Very
playing.
bold.
I'm making the pop juju play. Do you think? Let's close the segment out with a quick question. Do you think Rams 1 is more bold than Commanders 1?
Yeah, I do actually.
There it is. There it is.
I
I
do
love it.
actually.
I love it.
I believe in
Anyways,
our guys, man. I believe in them. I think anything is possible. I my vibe. Maybe it's just part of me not wanting to believe, and we'll see. I got time to change our mind. I could pick them to go all the way still as we
yeah,
get through, as we progress through this thing. But I think that they're going to be better. It may or may not reflect in record. I don't expect them to get less than 12 wins, but could it be another 12-win year? Every year is different. So the the anatomy of how that 12 wins gets put together could be different than the 12 wins from last year. Maybe there aren't as many close games, for example, right?
sure.
Maybe it's more a convincing 12-win season. But I just don't feel they're quite over that line yet. I think what happens this year is we knock on that door. Maybe it's NFC championship game. It's probably a lot closer game, a lot bigger battle. Maybe it's a rematch. And then the impatience starts to settle in the Washington fan base going, okay, now we've been the bridesmaid twice. Like, what's going on? What do we
Yeah,
need to do to break through that? But JD5 is a reason to believe because
always.
I still say he left that game with a really bad taste in his mouth. He wanted to make history. And I think if he gets that chance again, I'm not sure if betting against him is a smart move.
I agree. And I think, hey, all I hear is that Pop is very high on Andrew Wiley and De'Ami Brown. That's what I hear. Pop's big on those guys. So it's a big Benjamin St. Juice guy over there. If you think it's not a big, because those are the jokers that were starting last year where all the improvements we've made have been. So fine. Fine. Anyways, if you've been with us
You're
this
paying me.
far, you're clearly
We're going to Levi Stadium next year. Book it.
if you been with me this far, you've clearly been enjoying it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let's wrap this thing up before I'm late for work tonight. I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank you all for another great week, and hail to the Commanders.
Hell.